श्रीमते रामानुजाय नमः। श्रीमते रामानुजाय नमः। यो नित्यमच्युतपदाम्बुजयुग्मरुक्मव्यामोहतस्तदितराणि तृणाय मेने अस्मद्गुरोर्भगवतोऽस्य दयैकसिन्धोः
Sri Shankaracharya, the founder of the Advaita sect, Sri Madhvacharya, the founder of the Dvaita sect, and Sri Ramanujacharya, the founder of the Vishishta Dvaita sect, are among the greatest seers of India. They appeared at a time when, with the dominance of non-Vedic religions, the Sanatana Dharma began to decline. All three supreme lights were incarnations of the divine. Adi Shankara was an element of Lord Parameshwara made manifest. Sri Madhvacharya had three incarnations: as Anjaneya in Treta Yuga, as Bhimasena in Dwapara Yuga, and as Madhvacharya in Kali Yuga. Sri Ramanujacharya had four incarnations: as Adishesha in Krita Yuga, as Lakshmana in Treta Yuga, as Balarama in Dwapara Yuga, and as Sri Ramanuja in Kali Yuga. Sri Perumbudur, at a distance of 40 kilometers from Chennai, was sanctified by the birth of Sri Ramanuja. His father was Keshava Somayaji, an ornament to the dynasty of Harita. He was far famed as the master of all scriptures, as one devoted to Satya and Dharma, as the best of Bhagavatas, and as one who had performed all religious sacrifices and was a Sarvakritu. Kantimati was his wife. For a long time the couple had no children. One day, when there was a lunar eclipse, husband and wife bathed in the sea and then went for a darshan of Lord Parthasarathi. There they stood and prayed devotedly to the Lord to bless them with a son. Somayaji also performed the Putra Kameshti Yaga to please Lord Hari. Providence responded to the prayer of the devout couple. A son was born to them on Thursday, the 5th day of the Shuddha fortnight of the month of Chaitra of the year Pingala, corresponding to the year 1017 of the Christian era. This child has been praised as Lord Adishesha himself. It has also been said that Sri Ramanuja is the incarnation of the 5 weapons of God.
Somayaji and his wife were ecstatic at the sight of the infant, lustrous like the rising sun, Ilai Perumal or Lakshmana. The child grew up to become the celebrated Sri Ramanujacharya. Dyutimati was the younger sister of Kantimati. Her husband was Kamalanayana Bhatta. Their son was Govinda Bhatta. It was believed that an element of Garuda dwelt in Govinda Bhatta. Radiant like the Ashwini deities, Ramanuja and Govinda Bhatta grew up together. Sri Shaila Purna, Kantimati's brother, endowed Ramanuja with his own deep knowledge. The boy's powers of comprehension were extraordinary. By the time he completed 16 years, he was proficient in the Vedas and a master of 14 branches of knowledge.
Somayaji found a worthy bride for his son. Rakshambal became the wife of Ramanuja. She was also called Tanjamambal. Shortly after the marriage, Ramanuja lost his father. Ramanuja wished to study the Upanishads and moved to Kanchipura from Sri Perumbudur in 1033. He became the disciple of a celebrated guru, Sri Yadava Prakasha. Govinda Bhatta joined him. At times, difference of opinion surfaced between master and disciple in the interpretation of scriptural affirmations. Here are a few instances.
This is the interpretation of the Vedanta verse. Satyam Jnanamanantam Brahmam qualities cannot be attributed to Brahma because Brahma is without attributes. Just as a cow cannot be simultaneously endowed with horns and be without horns. Do you understand?
Sir, your interpretation does not seem correct. Satyam means free from deformity. Jnanam means self-luminosity of form. Anantam means infinity of time, space and object. Just as color, fragrance and softness dwell simultaneously in a flower, Satyatva, Jnanatva and Anantatva, truth, knowledge and infinity can simultaneously dwell in Parabrahma. They are not opposed to one another.
Yadava Prakasha, who suffered humiliation repeatedly in the presence of his disciples, began to simmer with anger and intolerance. An incident in the palace of the king Veera Rajendra was even more upsetting. The princess was being harassed by a Brahma Pishachi, an evil spirit. The king turned for rescue to Yadava Prakasha, who was a master of the occult lore. Yadava arrived in the palace with his disciples. The Brahma Rakshasa thundered at Yadava to approach with magical weapons.
You, Yadava Prakasha. The verse you are reciting is not new to me. You cannot get rid of me with your verses. I know the story of your earlier birth. When you do not know the story of your own earlier birth, what can you know of my birth? Poor fellow.
What do you know of my earlier birth?
Long ago, you were a lizard living near an anthill in a town called Madurantakam. Some Vaishnavas traveling from Sriranga happened to stay there for a while. They bathed and performed daily rituals and prayers, had their meal and departed. They had thrown the leftovers there and also spilt some sacred water. You consumed the leftovers and drank the holy water, and so you attained this noble birth.
Let that be. What about your earlier birth?
I was once a noble Brahmin. There were lapses while I was performing sacrifices, and so I became a Brahma Rakshasa.
You boasted that the sacred verses I uttered could not subdue you. Then, who can overcome you?
Look at that great, radiant Brahmin standing over there, Ramanuja, who is your disciple. He is not ordinary. A divine element is enshrined in him. If he places his lotus feet on my head and commands me to depart, I shall be released from the curse. The princess will then be freed from the spirit that troubles her.
What will signal your departure?
Do you see the yonder holy fig tree? That is my dwelling. The moment I leave the shoulder of the princess, a huge branch will hit the ground. That will signal my departure.
At the touch of Ramanuja's feet, the Brahma Rakshasa was liberated from the curse. The princess, now freed from the clutches of the spirit, shone like Rohini liberated from an eclipse. The king bowed and touched the feet of Ramanuja. Ramanuja's reputation spread and crossed the borders of the kingdom. And so did the envy of Yadava. He did not hesitate, even to kill his disciple. He consulted a close disciple.
How can I bear the disgrace which the Brahma Rakshasa inflicted in the presence of the king and Ramanuja? It looks as if Ramanuja has been born as the son of Keshava Somayaji only to refute the Advaita faith. He is the sworn enemy of Advaita. He must be destroyed, no matter how.
May I make a suggestion, Master?
Yes, what is it?
Let us make Ramanuja believe that he who bathes in Prayaga in the month of Magha will attain salvation, and then take him to Kashi. Let us drown him at Manikarnika Ghat. When he is bathing, he attains salvation, and you will not be guilty of any sin.
Ah, excellent suggestion. But we must ensure that this will remain a secret.
The pilgrimage to Kashi began. As they were traveling in the Vindhya forest, they had to cross a river. Govinda Bhatta let everyone walk ahead, managed to stay behind, and conferred with Ramanuja in whispers. He told his brother of Yadava's treachery and advised him to return to Kanchi. Shocked, Ramanuja stayed back. Govinda Bhatta joined the other pilgrims, announced that probably his elder brother had fallen a prey to wild animals, and pretended profuse grief. Yadava Prakasha breathed a sigh of relief. As Yadava and his disciples were bathing in the Ganga in the month of Magha, a Shivalinga floated to where Govinda Bhatta was. "You are indeed blessed, for Lord Vishwanatha has showered his grace on you," said Yadava, and blessed Govinda Bhatta. Govinda Bhatta installed the linga in his native town Srimangala and went to Kalahasti, where he became immersed in the worship of Lord Shiva. Ramanuja, who survived the machinations of Yadava Prakasha, entered a dense forest. Tired and not knowing which way to run, he sat under the shade of a tree and began to pray.
केशवः पातु चक्रे जाम्बूनदः प्रभः पश्चान्नारायणः शङ्खे नीलजीमूतसन्निभः इन्दीवरदलः श्यामो माधवोर्ध्वङ्गदाधरः गोविन्दो दक्षिणे पार्श्वे धन्वी चन्द्रप्रभो महान्.
Kanchi Varadaraja Swami, ever at the command of his devotees, appeared. The Lord and his consort Sridevi were in the disguise of a hunter couple.
Who are you, my friend? Where are you going in this perilous forest with a young woman?
Great Brahmin, we are born hunters, and the forest holds no terror for us. This is a forest infested with wild animals like lions and tigers. Why do you sit alone here? Where do you come from? And where are you going?
I belong to Kanchi. I set out for Prayaga, but for certain reasons I could not continue my journey. I was forced to stay here in the forest. I have to return to Kanchi, but I know not the way.
Do not worry. Come with us. We too are going to Kanchi.
The three spent that night in the forest. It was dawn. The Vyadha's wife made a pretense and said,
"Oh, I'm very thirsty. I need water."
Great Brahmin, there must be water somewhere nearby. Pray, make a cup of your palms and bring some water swiftly.
Ramanuja went in search of water. By the time he returned, the couple had vanished. Ramanuja heard the auspicious ringing of the temple bells in the serene dawn. Astonished, he looked up to see the shining towers of the temples of Kanchi. Ramanuja was thrilled. Pondering over the divine sport of the gracious Lord, Ramanuja was in ecstasies. Thereafter, he used to meditate on the Lord in the sacred company of Kanchi Purna, who was a disciple of Yamunacharya. Ramanuja would go into a reverie. After some days, Yadava Prakasha completed his pilgrimage to Kashi and returned to Kanchi with his disciples. He was taken aback to see Ramanuja there. Ramanuja offered obeisance to his guru and explained that he had lost his way in the forest. He continued his tutelage under Yadava Prakasha. In the meanwhile, Yamunacharya learnt about the miraculous episode and decided that only Ramanuja was worthy of succeeding him and adorning the Guru Peetha. he went to Kanchi with some disciples in order to meet him. Arriving at the Varadaraja temple, he met Kanchi Purna and made enquiries about Ramanuja. Kanchi Purna pointed out Ramanuja, who shone like the morning sun. Yamunacharya was thrilled at the amazing luster of Ramanuja. He blessed Ramanuja that he may attain perfection and spread Sri Vaishnavism far and wide.
Kando Kannekiriyana kando Tondirellirum vari Todudu ninnartham Vandar Dandan Tudayar Madhavan Bhudangal Manmel Pandan Padi Nadi Parandadiriginranave.
But Providence willed otherwise. Ramanuja was with Yadava Prakasha and he did not take note of the presence of Yamunacharya. Pressure of work compelled Yamunacharya to return to Sriranga. On another day, master and disciple were engaged in the discussion and interpretation of the scriptures. The disciple was applying oil to the master before his bath.
Tasya yatha kapyasam pundarikamevam akshine. This is a verse in the Chandogya Upanishad. It means that the eyes of Parabrahma are red, like the rare parts of a monkey.
Ramanuja's tears fell on Yadava Prakasha's shoulder.
Ramanuja, why are your eyes filled with tears?
Pardon me, great Guruji. Even ordinary poets regard a degrading simile as a flaw and eschew it. How can a scholar par excellence like you offer such an interpretation? Can the eyes of Parabrahma be compared to the rare parts of a monkey?
Well then, what is your interpretation?
The phrase Kapyasam Pundarika should be split into Kapi plus Asam Pundarika. Kam means water. Pibati is one who drinks it. Therefore, Kapihi refers to the sun. Asam means blossoming. Kapyasam Pundarikam Gambhiramba Samadbhuta Sumrashtanada Ravikara Vikasita Komala Dalaya Tekshana. It means lotus with a strong stalk rising from the depths of water, opened out by the rays of the sun. It is more befitting to interpret the verse to mean that the eyes of Parabrahma are as pleasant as a lotus.
After that, Ramanuja left Yadava Prakasha and joined the company of Kanchi Purna. By then, he had heard about the glory of Yamunacharya and yearned to secure his tutelage. Ramanuja learned that Yamunacharya, who was in Sriranga, was counting his days and his mind was in turmoil. He yearned to see him. Yamunacharya too was impatient to send for him and invite him to accept the grand mission of spreading the Sri Vaishnavism philosophy. He asked his close disciple Mahapurna to hasten and bring Ramanuja. Mahapurna raced to Kanchi. He learned that Ramanuja went every day to the Shalai Kinnar well to collect water for Lord Varadaraja Swami's holy ritual bath. He waited for Ramanuja near the well at that hour. As soon as Ramanuja arrived, Mahapurna began to recite the 11th sacred verse from the Stotra Ratna composed by Yamunacharya.
Swabhavika navadhika tishaye shitratvam Narayanatvaina vrashyati vaidikaskaha Brahma Shiva Shatamakha Paramasvaraditi Ete Vijasya Mahimarnava Viprushaste.
The verse means the Brahma, Rudra, Indra and others are mere drops in the ocean of Parabrahma. Ramanuja was thrilled as he listened. He went up to Mahapurna and requested him to enable him to see the sage who had composed the verse. Mahapurna conveyed to him Yamunacharya's desire and took him to Sri Ranga. But God willed otherwise. By the time the two reached Sri Ranga, Yamunacharya had attained salvation. Ramanuja was heartbroken. Ramanuja wished to offer his obeisance to the mortal remains of the great master. When he approached the body, he was surprised to see that the 3 fingers of the right hand were bent. He questioned the disciples.
Revered sirs, was the Acharya born with bent fingers? Or did this happen now?
They were all right, but now they are bent.
But why?
We do not know.
Were any of his desires unfulfilled?
When he was alive, he used to refer again and again to 3 desires he cherished. They were: first, for the good of the world. Commentaries on the Brahma Sutras should be so written so as to uphold Vishishtadvaita. Second, intense affection for Nammalvar should be aroused and commentaries on the Prabandhas should be written. Third, the great authors of Puranas, Vyasa and Parashara, should be remembered with gratitude.
For a few moments, Ramanuja turned inward. He comprehended the desires of Yamunacharya and made up his mind that they should be fulfilled.
I will collect all the truths announced by the great Acharyas of yore, and for the benefit of the world, I shall write Sri Bhashya, sacred commentary for the Brahma Sutras.
When Ramanuja made this announcement, one of the fingers regained its natural position.
I will propagate the Sri Vaishnava religion, endow the ignorant masses with the Pancha Samskara, the 5 purifications. I will make them proficient in the Dravida Veda, the Divya Prabandha, make them accept Nivritti Marga, or the path of involvement, and make them devotees of the Lord. And I shall ever remain their well-wisher.
The second finger straightened.
Sage Parashara composed Vishnu Purana to explain Jiveshwara. As a symbol of our gratitude to the sage, I shall bestow on a worthy Sri Vaishnava the name of Parashara.
Ramanuja respectfully offered this verse to Yamunacharya. The third finger of the gratified Yamunacharya uncurled. The assembled people in one voice enthusiastically hailed Ramanuja as a Mahatma, the great soul. Ramanuja offered his respects to the mortal remains of the Alavandar. And returned to Kanchi.
Rakshamba, the wife of Ramanuja, was a prisoner of tradition, and she could not comprehend Ramanuja's magnanimity and his overflowing compassion. And so, differences appeared between husband and wife at times and left both unhappy. Here is one such episode.
Rakshambal, I have invited to dinner today a supreme devotee and my guru, Kanchi Purna. Prepare delicacies which will please him.
What are you saying? Can a non-Brahmin have food in the house of a noble Brahmin? What will our neighbors think?
Kanchi Purna's devotion to the Lord is boundless. He is an absolute master of the spiritual lore. I wish to partake of the leftovers after he has dined. It is my good fortune that I am his disciple. I am bursting with the desire to partake of the leftover, for then my life will be worthwhile.
If he is so learned, should he not realize that he is a Vaishya and you a Brahmin? How could he accept your invitation? Purity and pollution are the very essence of the state of Brahminhood. Are you going to discard them?
Purity and pollution should manifest in our conduct. Mere pretense is meaningless. Let that be. This debate is unnecessary now. I will attend to the worship in the temple and bring my guru.
Most reluctantly, Rakshambal prepared the food and stood at the door, awaiting the arrival of the guest. She was surprised to see Kanchi Purna coming alone.
I kept you waiting, revered lady. Pardon me. What is your respected husband doing?
He left quite some time ago. He said he would complete the worship at the temple and bring you. He shall be here any moment.
I cannot wait till he returns. Respected lady, fruits and milk which you have offered to God will suffice. I need no delicacies.
How can you say so? The food is ready. Please have a wash and have your food.
Owing to Rakshambal's persuasion, Kanchi Purna ate his meal. He threw the leaf he had used in the dustbin outside the house.
It was a very tasty meal. The Lord is pleased.
Kanchi Purna departed. Rakshambal threw away the remaining food and cleaned the utensils with cow dung. She then had a quick bath and started to cook once again. By then, Ramanuja returned. He was astonished to see his wife standing in the sun, drying her hair. He was sad when Rakshamba narrated to him all that had happened. He felt sorry that his wife was so narrow-minded. Ramanuja was from birth indifferent to worldly affairs. Episodes like this one hurt him deeply. He saw no course open to him but to send his wife to her father's house and dedicate himself to the service of the Lord. He hastened to Kanchi Purna to seek his forgiveness. He touched his feet and begged his forgiveness.
I surrender to you. I beseech you to accept me here and now as your disciple.
Ramanuja, your request is not a proper one. How can I grant it? How can I accede?
Revered sir, I have certain doubts. Please submit them to Lord Varadarajaswami and convey the answer to me.
The Lord is aware of the doubts that trouble you. I shall submit your prayer to the Lord. He will answer.
This same night, while offering services to the Lord, Kanchi Purna placed before him Ramanuja's prayer. The Lord responded to the prayer of his devotee.
I am Parabrahma, the cause of creation. The difference between the Jivi and the Lord is proven. Trust is the right path for those who seek salvation. I shall grant salvation to my devotees when they shed their body. Let Purnacharya, a great soul, be your supreme guide.
The Lord thus pronounced his answers in 6 sentences. These are known as Arivartigal, the 6 pronouncements. Kanchi Purna conveyed to Ramanuja the command of the Lord. Ramanuja understood the 6 commands and bowed in reverence to Kanchi Purna. He wished to surrender to Purnacharya at once. It was in this situation that Ramanuja received a call from Gurupita in Sriranga. Mahapurna and others, the very cream of Brahmin community, decided that Ramanuja was the most worthy successor to Yamunacharya. Mahapurna was requested to bring Ramanuja to Sriranga. Mahapurna went to Kanchipura to fetch Ramanuja. And in obedience to a divine call, Ramanuja also left for Sriranga with an ardent desire to become a disciple of Mahapurna, who had earned the grace of Yamunacharya. By good fortune, the two met in the Sri Rama temple in the holy town of Madhurantaka. Ramanuja prostrated before Mahapurna and pleaded with him to accept him as his disciple.
We can go to Kanchipura and celebrate this happy event, can't we?
Great, sir. You know quite well that Providence deprived me the privilege of meeting Yamunacharya. What certainty is there that I shall be alive tomorrow? If my soul is to find the right path, you should be pleased to accept me as a disciple and confer the Panchasamskaras on me here and now.
God's will be done.
Under the supervision of Mahapurna, preparations were made to confer the Panchasamskaras on Ramanuja. In the presence of Sri Rama, the sacred Agni was installed. The sacrifices, Purusha Sukta Homa, Charu Homa and Ajaya Homa were all performed with the Mula Mantra. The Sudarshana Chakra and the Panchajanya were ritualistically worshipped. The Panchasamskara ritual was performed under a peepal tree in the presence of Sri Ramachandra. Mahapurna imprinted the Shankha and the Chakra on the arms of Ramanuja. The all-rescuing 8 syllables mantra, the Dvaya mantra, the Charma Shloka and the Dasama were repeated. Ramanuja was crowned in the empire of the servants of Sri Hari. When Purnacharya went on to bless Ramanuja,
After Yamunacharya, you alone are worthy of guiding everyone in the tradition of Acharyas. No one but you can show the route to the Supreme Lord.
the joyous cries of the Brahmins reached the very gates of heaven. Thereafter, Mahapurna stayed in Kanchi and taught Ramanuja the sacred texts written by the earlier Acharyas, which expounded their religion. It was during Mahapurna's stay in Kanchi that there was an unpleasant episode about him also by Ramanuja's family. Mahapurna departed from Ramanuja's house. Ramanuja was unhappy and left his wife in her father's house. Ramanuja renounced everything in order to dedicate himself to the service of the Lord's devotees. Lord Varadarajaswami himself initiated him into the sannyasi order. This was in 1049. Kanchipurna brought Sri Ramanuja, now a sannyasi, to the mutt with great joy. From that day, Sri Ramanuja came to be known as Yatiraja. It was Ramanuja's fervent desire to study at the feet of Yamunacharya, but since that desire could not be fulfilled, he wanted to go to Sriranga and sought guidance from Mahapurna, a towering scholar.
Ramanuja, in Tirukottiyar, which is nearby, there is a great person by name Goshtipurna. Go to him and request him to initiate you into the Sri Vaishnava mantra.
So Ramanuja went there. Goshtipurna initiated him into the 8-syllable sacred verse Om Namo Narayanaya and then said to him,
Beware, if you teach this sacred verse to unworthy people like Shudras, you will be condemned to hell. It is your responsibility to ensure that the sanctity of this mantra is not sullied.
So he warned. This caused a mental conflict in Ramanujacharya, but he said nothing. A divine peace filled his mind after the master initiated him. He prostrated before his master and was about to take leave.
There is a special worship in the temple today because of the local fair. After attending the worship, you can have your meal with us and then return.
Ramanujacharya said, I bow to your will, and turned towards the temple. There were milling crowds around the temple. They were elbowing their way into the temple. They stood outside and yearned to have a glimpse of the deity. Ramanujacharya was deeply perturbed. For a few moments, he sat under a peepal tree outside the temple, lost in thought. Those who saw his splendid form felt they were in the presence of divinity. A thought took concrete shape in his mind, and he formed the noble resolve to teach these humble men and women the sacred verse he had received. He climbed up the tower. In a loud and clear voice, he taught the sacred verse to one and all. In simple and clear words, he brought out the inner meaning of the verse. The gathering repeated the verse thrice. Om Namo Narayanaya, and the very air was thrilled. The atmosphere was charged, and holiness pervaded. A disciple carried to Goshtipurna a report of all that had happened.
Did I not warn you that he who teaches the verse to an unworthy person will be doomed to hell? And yet you disobeyed me. Have you not proved a traitor to a guru?
Forgive me, great sire, by transgressing your command. Only I go to hell, but thousands will be happy and have peace of mind. It was this thought that emboldened me to teach them the verse. I beg of you, please forgive me.
Ramanuja's magnanimity moved Goshtipurna deeply. He praised him as a noble person and embraced him. Since then, the Lord Sri Ranganatha Swami himself has named this Emberumanar Darshanam and blessed it.
Sarvadesha Swavyahata Parakrama Ramanujarya Divyagya Vardhadam Abhivardhadam Ramanujarya Divyagya Prativasara Digantavyapiní bhujat sahi lokahitaishini.
By now, it became clear to Yadava Prakasha that the hunter couple who rescued Ramanujacharya were none other than Lakshmi Devi and Narayana, and that Ramanujacharya was a divine incarnation. So nursing hostility would spell total ruin to himself. His mother's words,
Following Sri Ramanujacharya's religion will bring you prosperity.
These words now echoed and re-echoed in his ears. He went to his mother and unburdened his troubled soul.
Mother, I am a sannyasi of the Advaita faith. I have given up the tuft of hair on the head and the sacred thread. Now, if I have to become a Tridanda sannyasi, I have to perform atonement by going round the world. That is beyond me in this advanced age. What am I to do?
Why should this trouble you so much? Go round Ramanuja once and bow to him with reverence. That will be as good as going round the world.
Ramanujacharya accepted Yadava Prakasha as a disciple and gave him the name of Govindajiya. Kuresha and Dasharati were close to Ramanujacharya. Now, Govindajiya joined them as one of his close disciples. Ramanujacharya now wished to bring his brother Govinda Bhatta, a devotee of Shiva, into the Sri Vaishnava faith. He entrusted this important mission to Sri Shaila Purna. Sri Shaila came to Kalahasti and enabled Govinda Bhatta to have a vision of the essence of Sri Vaishnava teaching. He took him to Venkatachala and after the Pancha Samskaras made him into the Ardha Panchajnana. He then placed Govinda Bhatta at the feet of the Acharya. Because of the enlightenment he had received, Govinda Bhatta sought to serve Ramanujacharya. At the request of Yamunacharya's disciples, Ramanujacharya went to Sri Ranga and assumed the administration of the Sri Ranga temple and the mutt. Religious routine flowed smoothly. The reforms introduced by Ramanujacharya augmented the revenue of the temple and reduced the income of the old officials. They were simmering with rage and hatred. They did not even hesitate to attempt to poison the Acharya.
Undu madahadittan Odada dolvaliyan Nanda Gopalan marumagale Nappinnai Gandan Kamadan Kurali Kadediravai.
The Parupattedar tried to serve poisoned food at the ritual collection of alms. At the request of his disciples, Ramanujacharya gave up collection of alms from that day. Acharya Mahapurna had a daughter, Attulai by name. She was being harassed in her husband's house. She had to drudge like a slave, and yet her mother-in-law showed not an iota of kindness. The young woman once came to the mutt and shed tears before the Acharya. The Acharya was deeply moved. The mother-in-law used to taunt the helpless woman, saying,
"Are you not the daughter of the man who was excommunicated?"
Dasharati once happened to hear her and reported to the Guru. Ramanujacharya understood the wretchedness of his disciple.
The revered Mahapurna, the great Guru, is the greatest of Sri Vaishnavas. He once had to perform the obsequies of an untouchable called Maranambi, who was utterly destitute and had not a soul to care for him. The Guru himself performed the obsequies and, as a consequence, had to endure excommunication. Dasharati, you go to her house and work there and be a source of support to the harassed girl.
Thus instructed Sri Ramanujacharya. The mother-in-law was scared when she saw Dasharati toiling like their own bondsman. Wisdom now dawned on her. The family was happy.
One day, having rendered services to Sri Ranganatha, Ramanujacharya was on his way back to the mutt. He saw a group of children playing a game of divine worship. The Acharya went into a trance. The children had made a chariot using such things as tin foil, a sieve with wide holes, and twigs. A broken idol was seated in the chariot. The children had offered flowers without fragrance which had fallen by the roadside, and as Naivedya to the Lord, they had piled up a few pebbles. A broken timepiece served as halagarthi. Prasada, or the offering to the Lord, was distributed after the ceremonial worship. As Aralapadu is offered in the temple after the worship, the kids offered pebbles to the Acharya. The Acharya was in raptures. He became a child among the children. He spread his kashaya vastra and received the prasadam.
What is this, revered sir? They are after all mere kids. You are a great Muni. Should you play like them?
You read the Prabandhas from end to end, but you have not grasped its true import. Those who dance about crying aloud, Govinda, Narayana, are not mad. True, these kids are playing a game. But it is the game of divine worship. We are undoubtedly in the presence of God. Why should we not feel a sense of fulfillment like these kids?
In this manner, the Acharya enlightened his disciples about the nature of worship. To Sri Ramanujacharya, Lord Vishnu was immanent in the universe. The Acharya decided to go to Tirupati and have darshan of Lord Srinivasa. He reached the holy place. He offered worship to the Almighty and stayed for a day at the foot of the hills. The hills are another form of Adishesha, and so the Acharya did not wish to touch them with his feet. He stayed in the town below and recited the holy name of the Lord. Sri Shailapurna, who was on the hills, heard about it. He raced to where the Acharya was climbing the hill on his knees and requested him to come to the temple and have a darshan of Lord Srinivasa. The Acharya went to the temple and gave a discourse on Vedanta Sangraha and earned the grace of the Lord. A moving episode occurred at the time of Sri Ramanujacharya's visit to Tirupati. A young man, Varadarya by name, poorest among the poor, fell at the feet of Acharya and begged to be accepted as his disciple. The Acharya consented. As Sri Ramanujacharya was walking along an alley where poor people lived, he came upon Varadarya's dilapidated dwelling. Varadarya's wife was a lovely woman. She looked out of the window to have a darshan of the great Guru. The Acharya noticed this. She was yearning to come out, touch the feet of the Acharya and receive his blessing. But that was a dream, never to be realized. The reason was that she had a torn sari which could not even decently cover her body. The Acharya realized her plight and his heart melted. He threw the upper piece of cloth he was wearing. She wore it, came out humbly, and falling at his feet, covered them with her tears. At her request, the Acharya entered a humble dwelling. She was in ecstasy, but shrunk with embarrassment, as there was not even a grain of rice at home to offer anything to the Acharya.
Gracious sire, rest for a while. There is a rich man next door called Yagnesha. He is enamored of my beauty and has sought my company. Harsh poverty is roasting us alive, but I have protected my chastity. This body, a bag of flesh and bones, will be reduced to ashes one day or the other. Let his fire of lust burn it now. I shall tell him about my resolve and bring some money from him. Let me extend at least humble hospitality to you and fulfill my life.
Varadarya had gone out on his round, seeking alms, and was not yet back. Yagnesha's eyes were now open. He said, "Forgive me, sister," and followed her to her house. He touched the Acharya's feet and pleaded to be forgiven. He begged him to accept him as a disciple. A master wrestler, Dhanurdasa, had loved and married a beauty. The couple came to Sriranga to offer service to the Lord. Dhanurdasa feared that his lovely wife's eyes would wither, so he spread an umbrella over her head and devoutly followed her so that the sun might not touch her. The sight brought a smile to the Acharya's lips.
My dear man, why are you holding the umbrella over her?
There are no eyes in the world to match these eyes. And I'm holding the umbrella so that they may not wither.
If I show you eyes far lovelier than these, will you give up this infatuation?
I will certainly give up this infatuation and become a slave of the eyes you show.
The Acharya took Dhanurdasa to the temple. The Nanda Deepa, or the ever-bright light, had illuminated the sanctum sanctorum. The decoration with flowers was spellbinding. The air was charged with the fragrance of incense. Conch and gong sounded sweetly. Devotees were singing melodiously.
Pariyanahi vanda avudanudalgenda amarakariya adikpiran arangattamalan muhatte kariyavai pudevarande milinde செவ்வரியோடி நீண்ட அப்பெரியவாய கண்கள் என்னை பேரமை செய்தனவே.
O Lord, grant that Dhanurdasa may have a sight of your entrancing eyes. Let him have sight of your eyes, and so bless him.
At once, the Lord graciously permitted a sight of his enchanting eyes. In a moment, Dhanurdasa felt as if he had a rebirth. He felt he was immersed in an ocean of indescribable bliss and, unable to speak, fell at the master's feet. He became the most devoted disciple of the Acharya, and the Acharya also was very affectionate towards him. Often, after he had his bath in the river, he used to lean on Dhanurdasa's shoulder on his way back. Some disciples could not reconcile themselves to this practice. They used to say to one another, "If he so wishes, let him hold this untouchable's hand when he goes to the river. But how can he touch him after his holy bath?" The Acharya came to know of this. He decided upon a plan and called Dasharathi.
When all these disciples are fast asleep, tear off a bit from the washed cloth which they have left to dry.
The next morning, the disciples discovered that the clothes of every one of them were torn. They started blaming one another loudly and were at each other's throats. The Acharya called all of them and said,
Calm down, all of you. I have to make inquiries of Dhanurdasa. I'll ask him to stay back tonight. I want all of you to go to his house, and when his wife is fast asleep, remove all her jewels and bring them.
So he commanded. The disciples imagined that something dreadful was in for Dhanurdasa and were delighted. That night, when they entered Dhanurdasa's house, they found his wife asleep. They approached her stealthily and removed whatever jewels they could lay hands upon and fled. They placed jewels before the Guru. Ramanuja asked Dhanurdasa to go home and then said to his disciples,
Now, go again to Dhanurdasa's house, carefully listen to the conversation between husband and wife. Come back and tell me.
The disciples went to Dhanurdasa's house. They sat under the window and listened to the couple's conversation, and they were all ears.
Kanakagi, I don't see some of the jewels you used to wear. Where are they?
Perhaps the disciples feared that I am too attached to my dresses and jewels. Some of the Acharya's disciples broke into the house last night to test me. They removed whatever jewels they could lay their hands upon, one after another. I allowed them, but they thought I had woken up, and so they ran away. Poor fellows. Their troubles were not adequately rewarded.
But why did you not stop them and give them the rest of the jewels?
The disciples reported to the Guru what had happened. Ramanuja said with a smile,
Do you understand now? Kanakangi was born in a low caste, but dress and jewels did not tempt her. But you have studied the Vedas. You kicked up a huge row just because your old clothes were torn.
The disciples hung their heads in shame.
Ramanuja wished to keep his promise to Yamunacharya and prepare Vyasa Sutras. But he needed one source book, the Bodhayana Sutra. It was available only in the palace library in Kashmir. The Acharya set out on foot with his disciples. He visited several holy places like Dwaraka, Mathura, Brindavana, Pushkara, Ayodhya, Prayaga, Naimisharanya, Badari, and Saligrama on the way. The journey to Kashmir took some 6 to 8 years. The Acharya graced the palace and met the king. He told him the object of his visit. The king asked the officer in charge of the library to bring the work immediately and submit it to the Acharya. But the scholars of the court were apprehensive. They said to the king, "Your Highness, it is a very precious work. Once it is lost, it cannot be replaced. The Acharya can peruse the work here and write his work later." The king looked meaningfully at the Acharya.
How can the study of this much be completed in one day?
So the Acharya was worried. The study of the first half of the tome took a whole day. He was pondering over what he was to do. The work had to be returned, but he had not been able to touch the second half. Then Kuresha spoke to him.
Venerable sir, there is no reason for worry. I studied the second half of the works while you were reading the first half, and I read the first half when you were resting. Now I have the entire work by heart.
Kuresha was an Ekasandigrahi. He could grasp a work at the very first reading. The Acharya embraced with tears of joy the disciple who had rendered such inestimable service. The king too was happy that the problem had found such a satisfactory solution. He presented to the Acharya the gold idol of Lord Hayagriva, which was by the side of goddess Sharada.
May your great mission be achieved by the blessings of protecting deity of Kashmir.
The king prostrated before the Acharya. With the assistance of Kuresha, the Acharya wrote a commentary on Vyasa Sutra and became famous as the Bhashyakara. Thereafter, he composed 3 works, the Vedanta Sara, the Vedanta Deepa, and the Vedanta Sangraha. These works propound the Sadhya Sadhana. In order to explain these works, he composed the Sri Bhashya. He explained at length the power and greatness of unwavering devotion to the lotus feet of Sri Narayana. He also composed Nitya Grantha, setting out the manner of worshipping the Lord. His Gadyatraya expounds the Prapati concept in even simpler language.
Kulotunga Chola, the ruler of the Chola dynasty, hated the very name of Vishnu, and so the ever-growing luster of Ramanujacharya made him furious. The evil thought occurred to him that he should murder the Sri Vaishnava pontiff and flaunt the glory of the Shaiva religion. He ordered his soldiers to arrest the Acharya at once and bring him to the palace. The soldiers surrounded the mutt. The Acharya should immediately come out of the mutt. Such is the edict of the king, they announced. The Acharya was not at the mutt at that time. He had gone to the river for his bath. Kuresha, Dasharathi, and the other disciples were engaged in the routine of the day. Kuresha was not daunted by what had happened. Kuresha assembled the disciples and said to Dasharathi,
Dasharathi, set out at once for the Hoysala kingdom. I shall ensure that the Acharya reaches there safely. Take courage.
Kuresha decided to rescue the Acharya. He bowed in his mind to the holy feet of the Acharya and then put on the Acharya's clothes. He made sure the holy marks on his body were clear and in place.
You are the very reflection of great Guru. No one can have the slightest suspicion.
stuffed the vessel with my clothes. Report to our Guru all that happened here.
Do not worry. We shall take care of everything.
Srimate Ramanujaya Namaha. I shall leave now. How is this? All this while, you were a pillar of strength to me. Why has your face lost its luster?
I dread to think what will happen if the truth is discovered in the royal court.
The wise have said, the Guru is Parabrahma himself. And to me, it is a literal truth. The Acharya, holiest of the holy, bestowed education on me. He showed us the path of realizing God. He wished to fulfill the desire of Sri Yamunacharya and named our sons after Vyasa and Parashara and blessed them. Is it not our duty to ensure that no harm befalls our most venerable master? To save him is to save the Sri Vaishnava religion. Do not lose heart. The Lord is with us.
With these words, Kuresha, now dressed in the religious robes, emerged from the mutt. Mahapurna also accompanied him. Yelling with arrogance, the soldiers surrounded them and took them to the king's presence. The Acharya read the letter that a junior disciple brought. He opened it, praising within himself Kuresha's devotion to his Guru and his readiness to make any sacrifice. Devastating news waited him. Kuresha's disguise was discovered. The beastly Chola ruler subjected the two to indescribable torture and ordered that the two should be blinded. Kuresha did not want his eyes, which had beheld the Acharya, should be touched by the wicked soldiers. So he plucked them out with his own hand. Unable to bear the agony, Mahapurna ascended to heaven. The Acharya swooned with grief. Tears streamed from his eyes. His voice choked with grief as he tried to speak. Following the suggestion in the letter, the Acharya left for the Hoysala kingdom with his disciples.
The sun that set in the Chola kingdom rose in the Hoysala kingdom. When he entered Karnataka, the touch of his feet sanctified the earth. He followed the course of the sacred Kaveri, and passing through Ramanathapura, he reached Saligrama, where he stayed for a few days. Saligrama was then the stronghold of Jainas. A man, Vatuganambi by name, became his disciple. From him, Ramanujacharya learnt the state of affairs in the Hoysala kingdom, that the ruler, Bittideva, was a devout person, and the queen Shantala Devi was a dancer of rare skill. The princess was possessed and was in a sad plight. He also learnt about the political happenings. Vatuganambi requested the Acharya to visit the capital Tondanur, and he complied. The royal couple had heard that the Acharya had freed the princess of Kanchi from the clutches of an evil spirit, and so they were happy that he had come to their capital. They brought the Acharya to the palace with royal honors. They touched his feet and begged him to relieve the princess' suffering. The moment the great Yeti sprinkled holy water on the princess, the evil spirit fled. Words could not describe the joy of the royal couple when they saw the princess rise with silvery laughter. The three prostrated before the Acharya. Bittideva became a disciple of the Acharya. He converted to the Sri Vaishnava religion. Ramanujacharya bestowed a new name on him, Vishnuvardhana, and he became celebrated by this name. The followers of the Jaina religion were envious of the reputation of the Acharya, which was spreading by leaps and bounds. That King Bittideva embraced the Sri Vaishnava religion was like adding fuel to the fire. They were determined to humiliate the Acharya in a debate and to win the king back to their fold. It was decided that disputations would be held in the divine presence of Narasimha Swami. The Acharya was seated behind a curtain at the main entrance and the Jain champions were before it. The Acharya assumed his original form of Adishesha with 1,000 tongues and was ready for the debate. 1,000 persons flung 1,000 questions and he answered the 1,000 questions with 1,000 tongues simultaneously. The adversaries were easily worsted in the debate. The Acharya magnanimously forgave them and accepted them as his disciples. Similarly, the Acharya silenced the Jains in Shravanabelagola and inducted into his fold those who sought protection. At one time, the Acharya was perturbed because the stock of white clay which he used for the holy signs on his forehead was diminishing. One night, Lord Narayan appeared to him and said,
Great Yeti, do not worry. In the Yadavachala close by, there is plenty of white clay. Follow the Tulasi path. You will come upon a host of Champaka trees. To the north of this cluster, there is a big Tulasi tree. I dwell in an anthill under the tree. Let the world see me, and then install me, and build a temple for me.
As the day dawned, he told his disciples about the vision. Together, they went to Yadavadri. The Acharya desired Vishnuvardhana to join them. Using abundance of milk, the anthill was made to melt away. A light, not of this earth, was seen. At an auspicious hour, under the star Punarvasu, on Thursday, the 14th day of the brighter half of the moon, in the month of Pushya of the year Bahudanya, the Acharya had a darshan of Lord Narayana in his lemur form, which enchanted the entire world. Shedding tears of joy in raptures beyond description, his voice choking with ecstasy, he cried,
Gurunaya Gamai Oda Ula Udanandavar Karunai Kavandagalar Siddhahiyavanayar Terenadagana Immaile Pichadan Golvar Tirunaranandal Kalam Bharachinnetuimino
saw him who is of the color of the ocean, and he is mine. With the help of the untouchable cowherds who were grazing cattle, he made the anthill melt and brought the idol in great pomp into the town. The joyous shouts of the devotees, the sounds of kettle drums and other auspicious musical instruments reached the skies. The Acharya himself gave a ritual bath in milk to the deity and offered ritualistic worship for 3 days. The Acharya had a sacred bath in the Veda Pushkarini, shed the white clothes which he had been wearing, and wore the Kashaya Vastra which was spread on the Paridhana Shila. The lowest born who helped retrieve the principal idol from the anthill were honored. But the Acharya was troubled because there was no Utsava Murti, the idol to be worshipped at celebrations. He became immersed in meditation and surrendered himself at the feet of the Lord. Cheluva Narayana appeared to him once again in a dream.
O great sage, my Utsava Murti, Ramapriya, is in the palace of the Sultan of Delhi. Go at once and bring him.
The Acharya told the king about this.
Sir, Before you set out for Delhi, Lord Chennakeshava has to be installed in the temple at Belur. There are only 3 days for the ceremony.
The Acharya travelled to Belur and took stock of what had happened. With the sculptor Jakkanacharya to assist him, he went around looking at the images. He bestowed high praise on Jakkanachari, whose skill had made the various postures displayed by the Queen Shantala blossom in stone.
Jakkana, where is the idol of Chennakeshava?
I was about to tell you, Gurudeva. My son Dankana says that the idol I have sculpted is not worthy of worship. He says there is water in the navel region and the frog has settled there.
On what basis?
The sandal pasted on the other part of the idol has dried, but it has remained wet around the navel.
Carefully remove the layer on the navel. Let us see.
No sooner was the stone covering raised than the water began to ooze, and a frog popped out. Everyone was amazed. Acharya praised Dankana. Jakkana was crestfallen, but the Acharya comforted him, saying, "A father rejoices to be surpassed by his son," and cheered him up. Vishnuvardhana and Shantala Devi were unhappy because there was not enough time to make a new idol. But the Acharya said to them, "Do not worry, there is time until my return from Delhi." Sri Ramanujacharya set out with a limited retinue. He sent word with his disciples to the Sultan about his visit. The Sultan welcomed him with great pomp and respect and treated him with due hospitality.
Respected sir, may I enquire about the purpose of your visit?
I seek a Utsavamurti, Ramapriya. I understand that the idol is in your palace. I have come here to take Ramapriya with me.
I shall show you all the idols I brought away at the time of my military expedition. If the idol you seek is among them, by all means, take it away. Pray, come with me. Here, in this chamber, are the idols. You can take your own time to view them.
No, none of these is our Ramapriya. Show me any other idols you may have.
No, there are no other idols.
No, Sultan. My Ramapriya is here. I have no doubt about it.
Well then, call your God. If you are a true devotee, let him come to you.
Hardly able to speak because he was overwhelmed by emotions, the Acharya cried out to his dear Lord,
Come, my treasure, the enchanting Ramapriya. Come, run up to me, my dearest Ramapriya. Come.
In the chamber of the princess, there was a flash of lightning. The sublime figure of Ramapriya, a veritable treasure of loveliness, ran up to the Acharya with his tiny bells ringing and climbed up to his knees. Dressed in rich yellow clothes, his face beautified by a musk mark on his forehead, Ramapriya was enthralling in his loveliness. Overcome by his emotions, the Acharya embraced him. The Sultan now realized that there was divine element in the Acharya. He prostrated to the Acharya. The Acharya prepared to leave. The princess, who was passionately in love with Ramapriya and used to engage in loving dialogues with him, was now heartbroken. Her world seemed to collapse around her. She declared that she could not bear to be separated from Ramapriya even for a moment. She mounted a horse and followed him. The Sultan was bewildered. He consulted his ministers and decided to send his daughter with the Acharya. He placed his request before the Acharya, who agreed. The Sultan placed his daughter and Ramapriya in a palanquin and took leave of them. He sent his son with a troop of soldiers as bodyguards. Going to his father's instructions, the prince followed the great sage up to Yadavachala. The palanquin was lowered, and the prince went up to it to help his sister out. But his beloved sister had already merged with Ramapriya. The Acharya and all others were astonished. At the Acharya's suggestion, the prince had an idol of his sister made. Ramanujacharya installed it between the lotus feet of Lord Narayana with all religious rites.
The story of Ramapriya up to this time is a glorious one. In the Treta Yuga, Lord Brahma presented this idol to Sri Ramachandra. Then Usha, Sri Ramachandra's son, got possession of it. When his daughter Kanakalamalini married a prince of the dynasty, it was gifted to her as her dowry. In the Dwapara Yuga, Sri Krishna crowned it with the Vairamudi and decorated it. In the course of his pilgrimage, Balarama came to Melukote. He was struck by the resemblance this idol had to the Tirunarayana idol. He brought the idol and installed it here. Muslims had carried it to Delhi. Now, our treasure, this Ramapriya, is back.
Vishnuvardhana himself led the construction work of a new town. It was called Melukote. When the beautiful temple was ready, the great installation ceremony was held amidst great rejoicing and in accordance with the prescribed rituals. In course of time, Brahmins and members of other castes settled in the new town and devoted themselves to the worship of the Lord. Sri Ramanujacharya felicitated the Dalits who helped in this great cause. He allowed them to participate in the 3-day Brahmotsava at Tirunarayanapura. They were allowed to have a holy bath and enter the temple so that they could have a glimpse of the Lord from close proximity. Everyone praised the Acharya for his sympathetic outlook towards the downtrodden Dalits. When Sri Ramanujacharya learnt that the Chola king had passed away, he decided to return to Sriranga. The mentor and the disciples were reunited after many years. Bowing to his master's direction, Kuresha composed Varadarajastava and prayed to the god, and his sight was restored. He met the Acharya and requested that his sight be withdrawn so that he might not look upon things worldly. The sage made his submission to the Lord. He ever obeys the wishes of his devotees. He decided to receive the service of the Acharya in the world hereafter and ordained that he be called to his immediate presence to serve in close proximity.
O Yati Raja, in 4 days, on Saturday, the 10th day of the brighter half of the moon, in the month of Magha, in the afternoon, be pleased to arrive in the world hereafter to a magnificent welcome.
The Acharya was thrilled when he heard the divine voice. He began to look forward to his journey to Sri Vaikuntha. He called all the Sri Vaishnavas to his presence and discoursed for 3 days and nights. The disciples wondered why the master, who had not taught these principles all these days, gave these uninterrupted discourses.
Sri Ranganatha has been pleased to summon me to his presence. He accepts me tomorrow afternoon. You should all kindly bid me a hearty farewell.
When the Acharya revealed the divine wish in these words, the disciples pleaded with him, "Who will be our refuge hereafter?" The Acharya had an image made resembling himself. He embraced it and charged it with his own superhuman power.
Let this image receive the devotion you have shown to me and render your service.
Thereafter, images of the Acharya were installed in every Vishnu Kshetra to be worshipped by devotees. Of these, the images in Sri Ranga, Sri Perumbudur and Tirunarayanapura were installed by the Acharya himself. The Acharya's inner eye saw the reassuring palm of Sri Ranganatha. His inner ear heard the reassuring affectionate call. The Acharya's face grew radiant with satisfaction. He rested his head on the chest of Govinda and his feet on the knees of Andrapurna and lay down. His eyes were fixed on the sandals of Mahapurna and his mind rested in the lotus feet of Yamunacharya. The recitation of Bhruguvalli, the Anandavalli and the sacred Prabandhas and the melody of musical instruments all combined to create a blissful act. It was as if the world of the gods had descended to the earth. The holiest of holy moments arrived. His soul burst through the Brahmarandra and soared speedily. Sri Ramanujacharya had returned to the world hereafter and once again assumed the form of Adishesha.
The life of Sri Ramanujacharya, who proclaimed that Vishnu pervades all Vedanta, was a holy light. He shed luster on the earth for as long as 120 years. For 60 years, Sri Ranga was his sacred seat. The centers he sanctified by his presence during the rest of his life are chiefly Kanchi, Sri Perumbudur, Melukote and some other places. This sacred master Ramanujacharya guided without distinctions of caste, sex and community all persons to the redeeming path of total surrender. He came to be known as the Prasanna Yatiraja, or the gracious king of ascetics, because he bestowed on all living beings self-confidence, zest for life, and spotless devotion. Sri Ramanujacharya was the foremost philosopher who sounded the trumpet of the universal man 1,000 years ago. The system of philosophy of which Ramanuja was the pioneer later became famous as Vishishtadvaita Darshana. The pioneers of this system were Sri Nathamuni, Sri Yamuna Muni and Sri Ramanuja Muni. This school of philosophy declares difference between Jivatman and Paramatman on one hand, and the difference between matter and Jivatman, Paramatman, on the other hand. All these three entities are real in this school. This school holds the duality text and the unity texts of the Shruti equally valid and works out harmony through the Ghataka Shrutis or coordinative texts and solves all apparent contradictions. All scriptural texts are taken in the primary sense alone, as the Upanishads declare that Paramatman is the internal self in all entities, both sentient and non-sentient. All other entities are the body of Paramatman. This body-soul relationship is a spiritual analogy and not physiological. Principle which supports, controls, and uses for itself is the Atman, and that entity which is invariably supported, ruled over, and used is the body. This body-soul relationship between the universe and Paramatman is the unique doctrine of this school. So when viewed from this point of view, Paramatman is the one and non-second reality characterized by the orders of the sentient and the non-sentient. There is a difference between the body and the Atman. All names signify in the primary sense Paramatman alone. So oneness of the ultimate reality and differences between Paramatman, Jivatman and matter are affirmed. As Paramatman is the internal self, all terms signify Paramatman characterized by the Jivatman, characterized by matter. This is the essential nature of this school. This school has opened the gateways of moksha to all people without any distinction of caste, creed or color, through the means of self-surrender or prapati at the holy feet of the Lord.